Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our virtual Killer Crime Club, the Juicy Beach Reads edition. I hope everybody is enjoying the wonderful warm weather that we've been having. It's been a beautiful sunny day, and welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Sorry, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our virtual Killer Crime Club, Sorry about that, tech problems. My name is Veronica Wilson, and I am the Outreach and Events Liaison here at Idea Exchange. Before we get started with the main event, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. This is a virtual event. That means that we are at the whims of our internet providers and computers. So if we have any technical problems, just bear with us. We'll work really quickly to solve them. We just wanted to let you know that if any random links appear in the Facebook comment section, please don't click on them. They're not from us. They're just bots that kind of pop up, and they are just trying to get you to go to their webpage. So please don't click on them. They're not from us. We'd also just like to say that even though this is a virtual event, Idea Exchange's code of conduct still applies. Basically, this just means that all we're asking from you is that you be kind and respectful to the authors, the moderator, staff, and fellow attendees. If you're interested in purchasing any of the books that we're talking about tonight, our official bookseller is the Bookshelf. You can go to their website and order any of the books that we're talking about. If you're not from the region, just go to your closest local independent bookstore and you can purchase the books from them. I'm sure that they would appreciate your business during these times. The layout for this afternoon's event will be like this. I'll introduce Kayleigh and then she will introduce Adele and Karen. They'll talk for about 45 minutes. While they're talking, please feel free to send us your questions. For my Zoom people, you can send the questions either through the comment section or the Q&A section. For the people who are watching us on Facebook, you can just put your questions in the comment section, and we'll make sure to get those questions to the authors. I can't guarantee you that we'll get to everybody's questions, but we'll try our best to do that. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Kayleigh, who is just an all-around wonderful person. She's a writer, a book lover, and has been gracious enough to host and moderate many of our author events in the past, as well as in the future. Just let me get Kayleigh up here. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for moderating this event with us.
I'm so excited. I'm just excited to get to sit and chat with two of my favorite authors. We were talking before, and I'm going to talk about Adele and Karen really shortly, but we were just saying how great it is that we can actually have these conversations, and that it's been one of the blessings of the last few months has been to get to do these cross-Atlantic chats. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking, Veronica, and I'm going to introduce our two authors. I'm going to start with Adele, and I'm going to hold up the cover of their books that are just recently out in Canada while I tell you about them. So Adele Parks was born in Teesside, Northeast England, and her first novel, Playing Away, came out in 2000. And since then, she has had 17 international bestsellers, which have been translated into 26 languages. That is amazing and incredible, Adele. She has been an ambassador for the Reading Agency and a judge for the Costa Book Awards, and is a keen supporter of the National Literacy Trust. She's lived in Italy, Botswana, and London, and is now settled in Surrey with her husband, son, and cat. Welcome, Adele.
Hello, lovely to be here.
And then I have Karen Hamilton. So Karen, this is her second book out. Her first book was The Perfect Girlfriend, which I remember greedily reading a couple years ago. She spent her childhood in Angola, Zimbabwe, Belgium, and Italy, and worked as a flight attendant for many years. She's a recent grad of the Faber Academy, and having now put down roots in Hampshire to raise her young family with her husband, she satisfies her wanderlust by exploring the world through her writing. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So good evening, ladies, and good afternoon and good evening to whomever is watching us from wherever in the world you might be watching us. Thank you for joining us tonight. How are both of you?
We're doing all
Thank you
right,
for
aren't we,
asking.
Karen? Yeah, because it's quite warm in Britain at the moment, so we're quite excited, very happy.
Yes, it's really exciting to be asked. Thank you.
I think, Adele, you and Karen actually have warmer weather, I'm going to say for once, than we do. You said it was about 32.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's evening. So it's about sort of 7 o'clock in the evening for us now. And so most people are cracking open their barbecues across the UK right now, but we're both south, so we do get the better weather. My parents and my family are from the north, and they're constantly telling me that, will you please stop talking about how good your weather is and stop having a suntan, because it's not the same everywhere. But no, we're doing well. We're doing well. And aren't we all hilarious? Because we always think it's a British thing, but it turns out to be a global thing. We need to talk about the weather first. Good.
Yes, we do. It's true.
It's just one of those things we have to do to ensure that we all know what's going on in the world.
Definitely.
So what I wanted to do, I have a few questions arranged, and then I am going to pop in and out with Q&A from our audience. But how I wanted to chat was, both of you have 2 books out, which I just held up, The Last Wife and Lies, Lies, Lies. And I loved them because they're 2 very different stories, but they have such interesting themes that that arise in both of them, about friendships and relationships and children. So I'm hoping we can start talking a little bit about that. So I was wondering, Karen and Adele, and I'll let you figure out who's going to go first, but both of your stories are rooted in those really magical, special, intense friendships that we make at university. Can you tell me a little bit about why that was such an important start for most of your friendships in the book, and how that's such a pivotal time in your characters' lives?
Should I shoot, Karen?
Yes, please do. Sorry. Yes, please do. Thank you.
She's like, yeah, I'm not talking first. So Lies, Lies, Lies. Actually, this book is, I think it's like my 17th over in Canada, but it's my 19th in the UK. And it's a story about a couple that have been together for 15 years. So they're pretty solid, and they've had that, they've gone past the passionate, anything you do is okay by me because I just fancy the pants off you stage. So they're past that, but they are in that very wonderful stage where you're pretty solid and you're meant to be with your kind of best friend. If it's your partner for 15 years, in many ways, they should be your best friend. However, this couple have gone through a lot of issues and a lot of trials, including they wanted to try for a baby straight away as soon as they got married, and they tried for a decade before they actually got lucky. And that decade was really hard on them. As a couple, Simon started drinking quite heavily in response to trying and failing to have a baby. And Daisy actually turned to her friends to an extent. That's certainly what her friends thought she was doing. But in fact, she was closing in on herself and lying to them and lying to herself because of the pain of this when she watched her other friends all have babies. We actually meet them when they have got lucky and they've got their one little daughter and she's 5 years old, and you would think their world is now going to be perfect because they've finally got the one thing that they've longed for forever. But I mentioned Simon had been drinking, and actually he's basically a functioning alcoholic. And one of the things he's insisting on is trying again because he wants to give this baby a sibling. This child a sibling, and Daisy's very against it for reasons she won't quite articulate to her friends or anybody. And so the story is like, why can't Daisy talk about that? Why what happens with Simon's alcoholism? He does throw the family into absolute chaos and free fall, and we'll come on to talk about that and why. But it's interesting that you've picked up on the friendships, because everybody has said, oh, this book's about a marriage in free fall. But actually, it's her friendships that kind of maybe save the day, maybe don't. Won't tell you because it's a twisty, turny thriller. You'll have to find out. But that kind of sustain her through certain periods of her life. And when I gave this book to my agent, who I've had the same agent for 20 years, he turned around and said, oh my gosh, you've never had such fully fleshed out characters. I feel I know them. And I said, you do know them. These are the same characters in my debut novel. And he's like, no way. I was like, absolutely way. I know who's in my book. But in my debut novel, which is a very, very different tone, much more of a sort of romantic comedy, if anything, there was the characters that Daisy and Simon are background characters. They're pretty much a device. They meet and marry, get engaged and marry within a period of a year. And that's a background device for the main character, who's Connie, who has this huge affair. And so I wrote that 20 years ago. And at that time, the characters were much younger, obviously, and I've aged them in real time. And you don't need to read one book to enjoy the other. They're very, very, very different standalone. But because of that, I think these guys really have known each other for 20 years in my head. They've kind of continued to be having these intense conversations. And I think I've got a 19-year-old now, and he's going through university. And I think it's because when you go to university and you leave your family behind, which you may be desperate to do, or it may be devastating to do, but whichever reason, you do leave your family behind. And, you know, the way we are as a humankind, we reach out to find a new family. So our best friends, our close friends become our family, really. And we live with them and we cook with them. And we don't have to ask our mums and dads, can I go out and play the way you have done for 18 years? Suddenly you can just take charge of your own time. And so I think those friendships at uni become very, very intense very quickly. I know I have 4 or 5 of my best friends still now are people I knew at university, and I find those still the easiest people to pick up with and just talk to, because I've just known them obviously for a very long time, but also because they've seen all of me, the ups and downs, etc. And I think that works for characters. Also, if anything goes wrong with any of those people, that's so much more painful than if it goes wrong with somebody you've known for a year, or you know, so I think that's why it works for me. What about you, Karen?
Yeah, no, it's lovely hearing you say about that, because I remember your first book as well. So I remember it's one of those ones that have always stuck out in my mind. So it's actually lovely hearing all the background to it and everything. So it's fascinating. But I think you're right about friendships. And I did it in a different way with The Last Wife. So The Last Wife is the story about a woman named Marie. And right at the beginning of the story, you find out that her closest friend, Nina, has passed away. And Nina's, you sort of realize quite quickly that Nina's kind of been the only friend really in her life. And she slowly, or actually not that slowly, actually, to tell you the truth, starts taking over her dead friend Nina's life, because she feels that she knew Nina so well that she is the person to step in and help her grieving family. And she soon very quickly discovers that she didn't know Nina quite as well as she thought. And so what I did with this, I just thought, like, how well can we know each other? And you can, to a degree, obviously. And I think you're saying friendships, you know, you see the ups and downs, the good side, the bad side. But with Marie, because she's never really extended her friendship circle, that she relied on this one friendship because she lacked in confidence so much, she's kind of left with this idea that she really, really can take over this life. And it's quite a shock for her to discover that she can't, and that her friend had other friendships. And there's another element to the story which comes in soon as well, where a third woman enters, Camilla, and they were friends at art college. And you quite soon on discover that Marie felt she didn't like this because it's interrupted her friendship with Nina, and she struggled with this woman, Camilla. And then as the story unfolds, obviously you find out more about why. But I think it's because our friendships they're so important, and loyalty is so important, that what I did with the character Marie is I took it to more of an extreme version than, you know, we would normally.
And that it's a very clever device, Karen, as well, because going back to that thing of at university, we do know each other inside out because we're living with one another. Yeah. Whether that's in a hall of residence or you've got a little student flat, whatever it is, you kind of can't hide things from people you live with much. And certainly as a young adult, you sort of don't want to. You want to lay yourself bare. You want everyone to know you. But actually, truthfully, as we become parents and we have partners. As in Daisy's case, she's keeping so much from her friends, and she's able to, because she's, for instance, she's not facing up to Simon's alcoholism, and they can all see it, but they don't know how to tackle it. They don't know how to say, Daisy, you know, he's off the scale. You need to help him. You need to get in there. And I think maybe in your early 20s, when you're still at uni, you would have those conversations with each other. When you're in your 30s or 40s, you kind of go, do you know what? That's your business now. That's your family. And you back off. So friendship has a bit of a struggle of knowing where it sits after being such a high intensity intimacy thing and so important. It becomes, honestly, you've got to kind of find where it fits.
Yes, that's so true. Yes.
Now, I'm just going to pop in with 2 comments because I am getting some chat questions already coming up. We are going to chat, and then we are going to open up for Q&A in about half an hour. So keep sending questions in, but I just want to let people know that I am seeing questions come in, but I will get to them. And then the other thing, and Karen and Adele have both already said this, but we will not spoil any plot for any readers. If you haven't had a chance to read it yet, do not worry. I'm going back to something Karen said, because loyalty is a word that I wrote down in both of your books. And that line between loyalty and obsession is something that I think we talk about as themes in a lot of life. How far, you know, I think of especially Marie and Simon, they took their loyalty to really, really far places that I, as a reader, was thinking, would I be this loyal? How do you know, how far did you test these characters' loyalty, and when did you know you had gone far enough?
Do you want to go first, Karen?
Yes, please. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I thought you said you were going first. Sorry.
Oh, no, I mean, I will.
There's a bit of a delay. No, sorry, that's fine. Sorry, no, there was a delay and I misunderstood. No, that's fine. I can see. So with Marie, I thought that would be like the main thing for her, that she's made a promise to her, you know, her closest friend. She's made 3 promises actually, and she's just decided that that's it. She's going to fulfill these promises, and she does take it too far. And the way I pushed it was that I just, when I'm sort of smiling now because I always do this with the characters, when I'm thinking no, please don't do that, that's when I kind of want to push it. I think, oh no, this is just, you know, please don't do that, and it almost takes a life of its own. And I just think there's something so it's interesting what you said about that line between loyalty and obsession. At what point, you know, do you need to back off? And the point that you made as well, Adele, about, you know, friendships change as we get older, and we might not always be as involved or know as much. And I think that's just it. I just kept pushing until I thought, no, you know, this feels, this is realistic now. This is what she would do. And it's incredibly, I always get a bit worried if I say this actually, but it's worryingly good fun to do and explore. You know, I don't know if that's the same with you, Adele.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, we're both lovely Karens, so we like to explore not so lovely people.
Absolutely.
Because that's fun, isn't it? You get to be, one of the joys of being a writer is you get to live a lot of lives, actually. You get to explore a huge amount of people. And so Simon's the alcoholic, and most people would never associate loyalty with alcoholism, because you actually assume, oh, okay, alcoholism, so you're unreliable, which he is, tick. You're selfish, which he is, tick. You're a liability, which he is, tick. So it's actually quite a surprise that he also turns out to be absolutely obsessed with his family and extraordinarily loyal to his family, to the point where it's detrimental. Maybe. Again, maybe. Yeah. But you know, it is, that's the whole point of the novel. And I actually have, the novel is told from 2 different viewpoints. It's told from Daisy's and then Simon's. And you start with Daisy, and obviously she is dealing, she's gone through all the IVF, she's had the 10 years of trying for a baby, she's now got this great little child that she's a really devoted, incredible mum to, and this alcoholic husband. So actually at the beginning, I promise you, you're like Team Daisy all the way. And you meet Simon, even from Simon's point of view, he's pretty hard to like, because he's doing these dreadful things that actually I did research at length, and we can talk about that. And I talk to families that who support addicts. And so we were kind of getting also Simon's viewpoint too. But during the book, that constantly shifts of who you decide is the most loyal, is the most, they might be deluded. Either one of them could be loyal and still deluded. But they both have an obsession. His is his alcoholism and his family. Hers is also her family. Hers is like kind of keeping this perfect veneer of everything's fine, look the other way, don't look over here. And again, going back to that sort of friendships, so her friends all seem to be doing so much better. They all seem to be, their relationships are okay. They've got their kids, and they've got more kids, which is a sort of bone of contention for her as well. And so I think Simon feels loyalty towards Daisy because he didn't provide that, which is also to do with expectations. So I think that kind of comes into both of our books as well, this thing about what the outside world expect of a family, of relationships, of friendships, and how much pressure we put ourselves under because of that. I mean, that's the joy of domestic noir. You can really, you put ordinary people actually, oh, well, your lady's not that ordinary, just saying. She's so nice, I don't get it. You put ordinary people under absolutely extraordinary circumstances and see what happens. And for me as a novelist, I think that's the most exciting thing, because actually we all kind of know ourselves and each other when we're bouncing along at a relatively normal rate and we're not being tested and life's okay. But it's when something major happens in our lives, which it happens in everybody's lives, not necessarily these particular things, but things happen in our lives. That's when kind of true colors come out, and whether that's loyalty or obsession of the strength of your friendships, that's when things get meaty.
Now this is kind of, you touched a bit on being a writer and writing these incredible domestic thrillers, suspense novels. Both of you do it incredibly well. But how did you both start into it? Like, where did the first stories come from? Where did the first stories? Because most of us have many stories that never will see the light of day.
Okay. Should I do this? Karen's heard this. So she's heard this. She's been to one of my talks before. So I always wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a writer from being a little girl. And how that came about was I'm one of two daughters. And we were talking just before about now we're in this particular situation and there's a lot more family time. It seems very much like a sort of 1970s, 1980s childhood that we're all our kids are currently reliving. And to put that in context, my 1970s childhood, the highlight of the day, I kid you not, was going to the library. And it really was. And it actually is still one of the highlights of my day. I love a library. But so my sister's 3 years older than me. So I was always waiting around for 20 minutes here, there, or everywhere. And where my mum decided was the safest and best place for me to wait was the library. So nearly daily, I would take books out, read them that evening because there was hardly any TV, and return them the next day. And in the end, one of the librarians one day said to me, "Hey, Adele, do you think one day you might be an author? Because you read so much." And I was so little, I literally had to do that thing of going, I don't know what an author is. And that sort of embarrassment of not really understanding a word. And I already quite liked words and was showing off a bit, and mortified that I didn't get the word that this really important adult was saying to me. And she said, "Hang on." And she sort of rushed off. I can reenact actually. Because she rushed off and she brought back one of these Enid Blyton books. And this is literally one of my childhood books. And you can see here that it looks like the way they used to like write Enid Blyton on the books in those days, they kind of did her signature. And this librarian said to me, "Oh, you see, so that signature is because there is a lady called Enid sat at home writing you books." For many years, I actually thought Enid Blyton was literally sat at home writing me books. And then I worked it out. But yes, I think that was the first time somebody had explained to me that this physical book had been written by somebody. It's so dirty and filthy and mine. And it had been written by somebody and it was to entertain. And I just remember thinking, that's what I want to do. So from being a very young child, that's what I wanted to do. And so stories were always there. I mean, my parents were very encouraging, but had literally no clue how this would happen or how, you know, how that would come about. And we'll fast forward because there's two of us and there's too much to say. But eventually, I think I just grew up with sort of, I remember sort of walking home and go, oh, the blackbird's speaking to me. Now, at that point, your mum can go, you're nuts and you need therapy and, you know, I'm not interested. Or she can say, what's he saying? And let me tell a story. And she did that. And so life was full of stories all the way along. And as I got older, I worked out that I wrote a lot whenever I had issues, if I was going through a difficult time. And whilst I've had a very lovely, lucky life, which I have, when I was in my late 20s, we had as a family a series of deaths in quick succession over a period of a year. I lost many family members and friends and colleagues, and it was just really bizarre and unlucky, and thank you Lord that hasn't like happened since, but and they were all quite dreadful circumstances. And I ended up going to a grief counsellor and saying, I don't trust the world, I feel very uncomfortable, I know that I don't want to commit to people because they're going to go. And she said, no, what we need to do, Adele, is you need to become you need to find something small that you're in charge of and you can control. And at that point, I had a very big job at Accenture, management consultancy. And I looked after the advertising in Europe, Middle East, Africa, and India. I was traveling a lot. Didn't see much of it was under my control, even though kind of should have been. It felt like a really big, chaotic thing to be tackling when I was so sad. And I said, oh, well, I have these notebooks and I do this scribbling. And I used to years ago, I think I wanted to be a writer. And she said, well, just write your stories down and that you can control yourself. And actually it's great advice to give anyone who's ever going through a difficult time. Find something, whether that's gardening or baking or writing, whatever it might be, that you can control. It does give you a huge level of confidence. Because I'm a bit of a girly swat, I heard her say, go home, write 3 times a week for 2 hours and 5 hours at a weekend. And by your 30th birthday, make sure you submit a fully finished novel to an agent that you've by then researched. That's what I heard. So that's what I did. And so the question of like where the stories came, Karen might have a completely different answer because every writer does have a different answer. Yeah. But I just think they've always been in me, and I read an awful lot, as all writers must. And I just therefore think, you know, they're there ticking away. What's your story, Karen? Where's your origin story?
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear it. And like you say, everyone has, you know, it comes differently. But for me, what was similar is I always wanted to be a writer. I just kind of knew that was in me. And the same with the libraries. I loved going to the library and getting new books. I read a lot. You know, I had imaginary friends. I used to tell them stories. I remember even from being really young. So that was always there. And I traveled a lot as a child, and I always wanted to be a flight attendant as well. I absolutely love flying. I remember my first flight. I can remember everything about it. And so I did quite early on become a flight attendant. And the dream to be a writer was still there. And I don't know why I didn't write when I flew, because I had so much time. But one of my biggest regrets actually is that I didn't keep a diary, because, you know, I can't remember everywhere I've been or everything I've done, but it was an amazing experience. But I did used to, with jet lag and everything, I did used to be in these hotel rooms in the middle of the night somewhere. And I just think, why didn't I write then? What I did was I waited until I had no time and I had children. But then I started to realize how quickly they grew up. And I think it was seeing them, how quickly they grew up. It made me realize that if I didn't go for my dream of wanting to be a writer, then, you know, when there's never a good time to do anything really. But I didn't know what to do. So I didn't know anything about the industry or anything. So what I did was I sat down and I just set myself a word count, and I just kind of, I can't remember initially what I wrote because I didn't really know what to do. But you know, from that it kind of grew, and then I got a bit competitive with myself. You know, I kept upping the words, and then because you can't actually always do it every day, I would do it over a week to try and get it within a week. And I wrote, I've not actually gone back and ever read it. I will do one day, but I read this wrote this absolutely dreadful book, and I don't know what it was. I don't know what genre it was, and it was just a mixture of things, and it was kind of like all in there. But it kind of taught me that I want to write more on the dark side. And I think that was the good thing about this first book, that luckily I didn't know anything about the industry. I didn't send it to anyone because I didn't know. I mean, I read a lot of crime. I read a lot, but I do read a lot of crime, and I do read a lot of psychological thrillers. And I think for sure that was definitely something that, you know, I went into this darker side. And with my first book, there was a very strong starting point, and it was because I was changing out of uniform one day, and I had this sense of returning to anonymity. And I think that's kind of like where the two worlds kind of merged into one, really. And then I'm just really grateful that it's moved on from there.
It's interesting because you said there's never a good time to do anything, but you actually answered your own question, because the good time to do anything is now.
Yes, that's true.
That is the only good time to do it, because you didn't do it in the past. You didn't do it. If you haven't done it, you haven't done it. There's nothing, you can't spend your entire time going, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd done that. Yeah. And also even that what I want to do next is lovely, providing you do it. Yeah. But then a lot of people put things off and don't do it. So often I'm asked, you know, what are your top tips about becoming a writer? And I always go, write, which I think people find the most uninspiring top tip, but it is a genuine top tip, that just start doing it. And exactly as Karen and I both did, we just went away and set ourselves targets and set ourselves word counts. And neither of us knew anyone in the industry. Neither of us had a clue. Like, did you probably bought this great big fat book called The Writer's and Artist's Handbook? And it like sort of lists, brilliant. It lists all the agents. I mean, I'm certain there'll be the equivalent in Canada and every single country in the world. But in the UK, they kind of list all the agents, all the publishers, how to pitch, that kind of thing. And I just had it and sort of went through it. And I remember finding it really intimidating, but also really helpful.
Yeah. No, it's
very similar story.
Yeah.
We have a question that I think goes well with what we're just talking about. And it is, what would you say is your interesting writer's quirk or ritual, I guess?
I don't think I'm that quirky. Oh, maybe I don't know. I'm not that quirky. I sit in this room. This is my office. This is where I work. I'm currently at the end of my desk. I'm normally at the side of my desk. But the side of my desk just goes straight onto a white wall. It's really boring. And this is way more interesting for everybody else. So so I sit in, I prefer to be in silence. I prefer to be in my office. I prefer to be on my computer. That said, I can be in a noisy cafe with people playing music and kids playing around and do it longhand, and I would still do it. So I don't think I've got a quirk, except personality-wise. I think I'm surprisingly cheerful for somebody who writes thrillers. You know, I just don't have, everyone's like, why are you smiling all the time? You write the most grim stuff. And I'm like, yes, it's all below. It's all, you know what I mean? The whole point is it's lies, lies, lies. You know, it's all below. And I think it's because a little bit like Karen was saying in the answer to her very first question, it's really great playing that alter ego thing. But no, I drink a lot of Diet Coke. Is that a quirk or just a sin? But anyway, my insides are probably not as healthy looking as they should be.
Yeah, no, I like to have the radio on. That's my thing. I like to have the radio on in the background. I can write in silence, but generally I like noise. So yeah, I don't know if that's a quirk, but yeah, I have have the radio on in the background, and then I can, it just sort of feels right.
And what sort of things do you listen to? So it's the radio. So even if there's a conversation, that wouldn't bother you on the radio?
No, well, I have Radio 1 because I like new music. So I kind of like listen, and I like, you know, so yeah, it just keeps me quite sort of, like I say, while I'm writing all this dark stuff, it keeps me quite, you know, happy. And
I know there's some writers who actually make a playlist based on whatever book they're writing.
Oh, I do that. I certainly have characters. They have certain songs that I think that is the character's song. And if I'm doing a particular scene, I'm thinking, oh, I'll go and listen to their song before I get back into that. Yeah.
That does work.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I have a couple more questions, and then I am going to keep asking some of our audience questions as well. But one of my questions that I just love always knowing, is what are you reading right now?
Well, I've just finished a book that's completely different to anything in my genre. Because like Karen, I normally read a lot in our genre. But I have just finished writing my next year's book. And whilst I'm writing coming to the end of writing a novel, I find it really hard to be reading within my own genre, because I just don't want to know. I just want to kind of blank it all out and go, ah. So I was actually reading it's a romance. It's called All About Us. It's written by a man whose name is Tom something. He would be much happier with me if I could remember his surname. It's not out yet. It comes out in October. And it's about, it's kind of set with the premise of sort of Christmas Carol, where it's set in modern times, but he gets visited by somebody and he sees his Christmases past, present and future, because he's in a certain point with his relationship and kind of looking over his shoulder and thinking, did I choose well? And then he's taken on this journey. And it's a really absolutely sweet, heartwarming romance, all about second chances. And it's very different to anything I'm writing at the moment. But I think that's what I need to almost decompress. So when I leave my desk like this, I can go, and have that moment when I just relax. So that's what I'm reading. Karen?
I've just finished a book by Stephanie Scott, What's Left of Me Is Yours. And it's set in Tokyo, and it's it's beautifully written, absolutely beautifully written. It's absolutely amazing. But and I've learned so much. And it's about someone who's looking back on her mum's life and going in, and it's absolutely fascinating. And it's just nice to read about something different and learn something, and just have it, because I do read a lot of different things, but it's just nice, isn't it, sometimes to mix. So yeah, I've absolutely loved it. Absolutely brilliant book.
And also you've done that classic thing of traveling with your book, because you were saying, you missed your travel, and now everyone is missing their travel.
Yes.
Books give us that opportunity to go on journeys, don't
Absolutely, and they teach us things, don't they? So yeah, it's absolutely, that's a really good point.
I think the way we're all going to be traveling for a little while right now. Question for you. This is my last question. I have tons of questions. I could keep us chatting for another couple hours, but we do have other questions to get to. But just picking up on our comment of just, this is the kind of traveling we'll be doing. How have any future books or ideas been impacted by the quarantine? Like, you tend to write, you put dates and years, and your characters are often very much present day. How will the last few months, like, our world has gone through not only a pandemic, but revolutions, and there has been so many social changes as well. How have you thought about how that's going to affect characters? Will it, I guess?
Karen, do you want to do that?
Yeah, it's something I've thought about a lot, how to do that. And with the book that I'm writing at the moment, I wasn't dating it as such anyway. So I've made very general references. So it isn't necessarily to this year, but and that's kind of how I've done it for now. Whether that I'll change that in edits, I'll see. But for now, it and some of it's set in the past as well, which obviously helps. So I've kind of dealt with it that way.
You're absolutely right. I've written 20 books in 20 years, and I just have always written them in the year that they're going to be published, so to speak, or the year I wrote them, and that's it. And except for two of them are historical, and they were set in the 1920s, and I've never time traveled, much as I would love to. But so the one I've been writing for 21, which will be published in 21, which is probably 2 books away from Canada. You've got another one in between coming. Yeah. But the one I'm writing and is now finished was set in March 2020. Yay! And it's about these 2 separate women, 2 women in London. One's a mother with 2 tween-age sons, and kind of, pretty ordinary, lives in a terraced house, her and her husband are always a little bit worried about money, but normal, quite happy. And then there's another woman who lives in a fabulous luxury apartment with her banker husband, a couple of miles apart. But the way it is true in London, we might be physically a couple of miles apart, but you can be light years away in experience and in opportunities and etc. But both women go missing on the same night, and no one thinks it's connected, except one particular policewoman is convinced there is a connection, and she's kind of fought on this. And I was thinking, why are we fighting on her? Why aren't our bosses getting behind her? Because I'm very, actually, kind of like, the vast majority of police people mean really well, and I don't want to write books of going, this police person's an idiot, why isn't he following this up? But the woman police person was really thinking it was a thing, and her bosses were objecting. And then after lockdown, it's like, oh yeah, because they were putting their resources elsewhere. So I was very conveniently handed an excuse, because I was sort of going, she would be constantly told there are no bodies, there are no reasons to think these people, they could have just walked away. Why are you worried about these two women? So I then had, well, it's the run up to lockdown, which also increases the tension in the book, because she knows that if we go into lockdown, she will not find these women, and she needs to find them beforehand. And actually so there were a number of issues in the book that were intensified because of what we were really going through. But I didn't want it to become a lockdown book, and it certainly isn't. So there's just like the odd reference where the mum says to her son, wash your hands, sing happy birthday twice. Because that's what we were constantly told, sing happy birthday twice. And was it the same advice for you guys?
Yeah.
There we go. And so it's just little things like that. You think, oh, I know where you are then. But it's not like going, oh, this is the week before lockdown, until the police start having a bit of an issue. But it's not a lockdown story. It's, as ever, it's a very ordinary set of people put under extraordinary circumstances.
I can't wait to read that. I have a bunch of questions coming in, and a lot of them actually are about your characters. So one question, and I'm sorry, I don't have the names on these, but thank you for sending them in. The first one is, what comes first, the plot or characters?
Well, me?
For me, it's character.
Point to me when you want me to do it.
Yeah, there is. It's for me, it's characters. Yeah, I think of them first, and I think of something that someone really shouldn't do, and then that's the spark for me.
Okay, so actually you said you think of your characters first, and then you think of something they shouldn't do. So it's almost simultaneous, because you're already thinking of the plot. And so mine's almost simultaneous, but I slightly start the other way around. So I might have a theme. So I was really interested in obsession and alcoholism, and really felt that was something I wanted to talk about, and knew that, because this book, this isn't a spoiler, this happens in like first chapter, so this isn't like a really bad thing that I'm telling you, because it's called Lies, Lies, Lies. This is just lie number one. But he is very insistent. Simon is very, very, very insistent that he wants his second baby, and he takes himself off to the best doctor he can find, best fertility doctor in the country, and says to the doctor, what else can we do? We had this baby after years of IVF. When we gave up on IVF, we actually got lucky, the way people can. And what can we do now to increase our chances? And the doctor says to him, look, I'm really sorry, you will never get lucky again. You know, first of all, it's 5 years on. You'll never get lucky again. But he also says, and actually you never did. You've never been a natural father. So this isn't a spoiler, I promise you, because you did ask no spoilers, but that is genuinely the first lie. That's like chapter 1. And so you immediately know Simon's up against something, and Daisy can't be telling the truth then, can she? I mean, biology's pretty limited. Didn't even get my GCSE, but I kind of know that's how it works. And so there's a lie, and it immediately spins him. He was a functioning alcoholic before. With that kind of news, he functions ever slightly less. And that's why they go into free fall. And there are a lot of other layers and twists and turns that you'll discover. But I remember quite early on, a long time ago, somebody telling me about before you could do tests of DNA and know who's who, apparently, don't say that again, this might not be true, but in each maternity ward, it was accepted that up to 20% of those babies would not be fathered by the people that who think they are the
Sad.
fathers. Back in the day, before there was like careful contraception or that kind of thing. So I've always been blown away by the statistic going, ladies, get your act together. You know, there's quite a lot to discuss there. But I remember thinking, you know, that's a story. And it's always been kind of in the back of my head, you know, this, what makes a parent? Because I firmly believe what makes a parent is the person who brings you up. I do not actually believe it's biology. But I know that a lot of people have a different view, and that's fine. And everybody's allowed loads of views. I love lots of views. And but I just thought that was something. And then I thought, who would it be the worst thing for this to happen to? I mean, it's not good news for anybody, but that's when I thought, well, if somebody found out they weren't the father and they're also alcoholics, of course they're going to go and do something dreadful. And that's important. And then also, because I did have this very sweet couple way back in my 20-year history that had been this device in book 1, I was thinking, oh, I wonder how they're hanging out. Yeah, they were a bit smug, weren't they? They thought life was going to be super easy. Let's just pull them out and see what happens. So I think that for me in this one, plot came first. And then I thought, who would the worst person for this to happen to? Whereas you're saying, Karen, you think of this person and you think, what's the worst thing that can happen to them? So I think it's very simultaneous. I always say it's chicken and egg. I actually do whole courses on this, and I lecture at various universities and do masterclasses on it and blah, blah. And I always, in the end, go, it's chicken and egg. You need them to do this at the same time.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, this is a second question, again about characters. Do you have a main character that holds a special place in your heart? And if so, why?
I like them all.
And I was going to say, it could even be any character. I don't even think it has to be a main character.
Okay, I almost am going to do the opposite. Can I give you a warning, a health warning on lies, lies, lies? Daisy is so annoying. I mean, just saying. You know, she really is. I mean, stick with her because she has her moments. But she's so unlike me. She's really closed and she's secretive. She obviously has secrets. She's vulnerable. She's a bit sanctimonious at times. And as I was writing, I was like, cheer up, love, come on. And then it was hilarious because I was really like, you're making her this way, Adele, you know, it's not her fault. But so she's somebody I ended up liking despite myself, because I have to, like, it's a reasonable thing. There are a lot of people in life you may not like instantly, but when you find out their stories or you understand them, you kind of go, okay, I get you. Might not still like you, but I kind of get you. And I think there's something about life in accepting that. I think we're all a bit judgy, and we're all a bit like, if you're not my clan and you don't agree with everything I say, I don't want to know. And that's such a terrible way to run your life, because if you can kind of go, okay, you don't think the way I think, you haven't had the experiences I've had, but you're fine. That would make everything a lot easier for all of us.
It really would.
It really, really would. It's so simple, but it really would. So when I write characters, I sometimes write, and obviously Simon's no picnic, he's an alcoholic, you know, so I write these characters that I think, gosh, you're quite annoying. It's like having a teenager that you love, but you just wish they're wet towels. It's just that kind of feeling, you know. So but I think as I've gone into domestic noir, I like my characters less. There's less special part. But on the other hand, I have to say, Daisy and Simon got me my first ever #1 bestseller in the Sunday Times in the UK. And I've been writing for at this point in the UK, I'd produced 19 books, 19 years that all hit top 10. I had stopped asking for the #1, stopped hoping for it, dreaming for it, because I was just like, do you know what? I'm so lucky. This is an amazing career. Isn't this nice? And then those guys got me there, because I think people do love them for something I can't tell you about. So in the end, I think they probably have a special place just for that, for like, thanks for helping me tick that box. I didn't even think I wanted to, I knew I wanted to, but I didn't think it was ever going to happen. And so I think I'm soft for them because of that. Karen, what about you? Do you love your baddies?
Yeah, I do. I don't know whether I should admit it or not again, but yeah. And I think for me, because It's first person, and that it's the one voice throughout the whole book, for both of mine, and with the third one. It's because I have to justify what they're doing. Well, not you know, they still, what they're doing still isn't right, but what I'm trying to do is, in their own heads, they're justifying whatever it is that they're doing. So for me, yeah, I quite like that side of them, the fact that you're doing something that most of us would never do, but they're thinking, but you know, I haven't really got a choice here, or this is a good decision. So yeah, that's kind of where, you know, I do like them. I do have fun, you know, trying to think like them as well. That's, you know, a really enjoyable part of the process for me.
Karen, can I have a follow-up question on that? Do you like them more than your real friends? My real friends are so annoying. They all have like their own agendas. They don't follow my life. I can plot their lives. They don't follow that. Those great characters, God love them. They do as they're told.
Yeah, they're very well behaved, our characters, really, aren't they?
Yes, I'm teasing. I love my real friends.
Yeah, no, it is interesting, isn't it? Because you can, you know, make them do whatever. I don't think I'd like to meet my characters, though. I'm not sure I'd want them in my life, but yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting.
I agree with you on that, Karen. I enjoy your characters because they're so gray, right? Like, they're not really, really good people, but they're also not like super villains. They're these, like you said, they're these people who are just trying to do the best they can, but you really don't like them.
And then bad choice people, aren't they?
Yeah,
bad choice people. It's like, go that way. No.
Yeah, don't go that way.
That's why it's brilliant fun.
Yeah.
I'm just checking the time. We have 5 minutes left, and I have one last question from Hannah, who says, first of all, such a pleasure listening to both of you. And what surprised you the most when researching your novel? You both have talked about researching and some interesting careers and themes in your novels.
Okay, so my research on this one was largely about, I mean, there was a bit of research on fertility, but largely it was about the alcoholism. So what I do whenever and there's always a theme in my books that probably quite sensitive and quite difficult. And I realize it has touched a lot of people's lives, and I don't want to get it wrong because it's insulting if you just kind of get it wrong. So they used to just worry about, am I getting their careers right? Is police procedure anywhere near right? But now I'm like, no, actually, if I'm talking about alcoholism, I know people are very, very affected by this. Let's get it right. Yep. So I quite often first go out. It's really good to follow me on Facebook because you get some random questions, which might be, you know, like, is anyone a midwife? Talk to me about midwifery. But this one I went out and said, would anybody like to talk to me about supporting an alcoholic and their family? And I thought, I wonder if anyone will come forward with this. And I kind of started to look on forums as well. And I go on forums and say, hey, I'm not in the same situation. I'm actually writing a book. Are you comfortable with me being here? And all those proper things you have to do. You can't pull the wool over anyone's eyes in this. But what I found was the most surprising is universally, people who support alcoholics absolutely want to talk to you about their experiences, because I'm anonymous and I'm never going to know them or see them or judge them. And actually, a lot of the thing about supporting an alcoholic is other people judge you, kind of like, why are you putting up with that? And that's what Daisy deals with her friends a lot. People are kind of like, why are you putting up with that? And people told me really particular stories. And one of them, I did ask permission for this to say, can it make it into the book? And they were like, please do. There was somebody told me the story about, she was at a dinner party, and it was a really kind of quite posh, middle class dinner party where everyone's talking about, you know, the price of the shrimp or something. And the guy that they knew, and they all knew each other forever, and this guy that they knew was drinking too much, stood up to try to go to the bathroom, but couldn't discern the difference between a cupboard and a bathroom, and opened a cupboard and used that as the bathroom. And it was like the Coke cupboard, and then closed it and sat down at the table. And I was like, what did everybody say? What was the reaction? She said, we kind of carried on. Like, the host got up and cleaned it, but nobody said, what are you doing? And I found that absolutely extraordinary. I thought, what stage do you get to in your friendship groups that you can't say, guys, stop it, what is going on, you know? But that's the story. So I found that quite a shocking / surprising part of research, and also very vulnerable, and not something you judge at that point. You go, in fact, at the point before, let's get some help.
Karen?
Yeah, for mine, for each character, I've done a fictional therapy session in character. There's a writer friend of mine, Nikki Cloak, who also writes in them, Phoebe Locke. She introduced me to a psychotherapist who does these. It's called Characters on the Couch, and it's fiction therapy. And I didn't think I'd be able to do it actually in character. But it's another worryingly easy, another thing. Although I did stop halfway through the first one and just say, I don't really think like this, honestly. So that's kind of like for the character development. And even though with my first book I was a flight attendant, there's still and I don't know if it's the same with Adele, there's still a surprising amount of research that comes into a lot of things. And with The Last Wife, it does touch on infertility as well, which is something I'm fortunate now to have children, but it's something that I experienced. So that was, there's a bit of that that comes from me. I also research book groups. The psychotherapy angle comes from doing a course for writers. I haven't studied it, but there's a surprising amount of research, and it's interesting what Adele says as well. It's trying to sort of also, portray it accurately and sensitively, and deal with all those things as well. And it's trying to get it right, really, in a good way.
I think my biggest honor of this book, and I mean, I am showing off that it did get the #1, which I'm so chuffed about, but more chuffed actually about how many people afterwards wrote to me and first of all said, I'm so sorry you've lived with an alcoholic. And I was like, great. If you now think I've done a good enough job that I must have lived with an alcoholic, which I haven't, but how brilliant that. But then they would always kind of go on and say, this is my father, or this is what it's like with my son, or whoever it might be. And it's, I think that's a lovely thing about books. I think authors, even if we write kind of freaky characters that you kind of go, oh, don't want her in my life, you actually are reaching out to make connections. That is the point of being a writer. We're normally, I mean, we're very social now and we're chatting, but normally writers are relatively shy or insular or more in their own heads than other people's. But what they really secretly want, I think, although obviously I can't speak for every writer, is to reach out and make connections. And so when somebody says, yeah, I read that, I got it, I understood it, that's the goal. So you definitely don't want to put them off by not doing your research, because doing research is actually a relatively easy and joyful thing to do. It's keep interested and all that kind of thing. But I think in the end, certainly for me, and I think Karen would agree, that I am looking for connections. I want people to kind of understand something I want to say about humanity and kind of go, yeah, that's what I think. And that's a lovely thought.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Adele and Karen, so much for your time. I know Veronica's going to pop on and say a thank you as well, but just thank you for sharing and being with us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Total pleasure, wasn't it? It was so
it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
I mean, I am I'm not seeing you in real life, which was the first tour ever to Canada. I was so excited. But
next time, ladies.
And this has been very similar. I mean, without the hugs, because no one can do that anymore. But
brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. For a Killer Crime Club, I don't think I've ever laughed so much in an author, panel discussion. I figured it would be really, like, usually sometimes they're very serious, but I was just laughing almost the whole entire time. So it was lovely to watch. So thank you for taking time out of your evening to be with us. And thank you, Kayleigh, for being always the fabulous person that you are and moderating this event for us. And then for all my viewers out there, I would like to thank, you don't see them, but they are working busily behind the scenes, Jamie and Jen, who have been, making sure everything works on the tech side of things. So I want to say thank you to them. And thank you to HarperCollins for, always supporting us. We wouldn't be able to run these events without their support. I wanted to let everybody know about a few author events that are coming up. So Eden Mills Festival is happening right now, and we are doing a joint event with them for Emma Donohue's new book, The Pull of the Stars, which is a very fitting book. It's about the great plague, the great flu that took place in 1918. But before the event, on Tuesday, August the 18th at 7 p.m., Kayleigh is going to be hosting a book talk about the book. So please join us. It's on a Zoom because we can't get together in person, obviously. But it will be a fabulous night. You can bring, a cup of coffee, a tea, or, a glass of wine. And then on Tuesday, August the 25th at 8 p.m. is the main author event, which will also be on Zoom with Emma Donohue. And then keep your eyes open. We have lots of author events happening this fall. So because they're just so much fun. It's just so much fun to be able to talk to you. I love reading the books. So to be able to meet the people behind these wonderful books, it's just such a pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you again. It was just lovely and great questioning, Kayleigh. It's just very lovely. It felt very relaxed chat, really.
Yeah, it was lovely. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you. Yeah, great questions too.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you next time. Oh, sorry. My cat, would like to wish a happy International Cat Day to everybody. She's biting my arms. Just to remind me of that. Okay. So Alex.